she told me to stay the night. And in that one evening, she revealed a truth I never saw coming. The night air was cool as I walked up the quiet street. The faint hum of distant traffic, the only sound breaking the calm. Her home appeared suddenly, warm light spilling from tall windows onto the cobblestone path. There was a grace to the way she lived, effortless yet refined, that I had glimpsed only briefly before tonight. I hesitated for a moment at the doorway, noticing the delicate scent of her perfume mingling with the crisp night air, and took a deep breath. When she opened the door, she smiled, a little amused and entirely self-assured, her presence filling the space even before she spoke. "Come in," she said softly, her voice low and inviting, with a warmth that immediately contrasted the chill outside. Her gaze lingered just a second too long, as if reading my thoughts, and I felt a small, unaccountable tug in my chest. The interior was a revelation. Soft amber lighting cast a comforting glow over the room, highlighting shelves of books and scattered art, each piece hinting at a life lived with thought and care. A fire crackled faintly in the hearth, filling the space with gentle warmth. I noticed the subtle details, the smooth texture of the rug under my shoes, the faint, lingering aroma of her favorite tea, the way her curtains swayed slightly in the evening breeze. It all felt intimate, yet inviting, a home that somehow seemed to be waiting for me. Then, unexpectedly, she said it. "Stay here tonight, and I'll show you the truth." Her tone was playful, yet there was an undercurrent of something serious, something I couldn't quite name. My heart skipped, a mixture of curiosity and hesitation pulsing through me. I caught her hand as she gestured toward the sofa. Nothing dramatic, just the lightest touch, but it sent a shiver through me. I realized, suddenly, that this wasn't just an ordinary visit. We moved toward the living room, our footsteps soft against the hardwood floor. The faint rustle of her skirt as she walked beside me, the subtle shift in her posture, the tilt of her head as she studied me. Everything felt like a dance I hadn't learned but instinctively knew how to follow. She gestured toward the sofa again, and I noticed how her fingers brushed mine just long enough to make my pulse quicken. We settled into the room, and a quiet tension hung in the air. She poured tea, the steam rising and thin, curling wisps, and handed me the cup. Our fingers brushed again, and I caught a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability behind her confident smile. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it made me want to understand her, to see beyond the poised exterior into the truth she promised. As I sat there, warm tea in hand, the world outside faded. Only the soft amber light, the faint crackle of the fire, and her watchful gaze remained. And in that moment, the invitation wasn't just about staying the night. It was about stepping into something I couldn't yet understand, a truth I was suddenly eager to discover. The soft glow of the room seemed to wrap around us like a quiet promise as we settled on the sofa. I watched her move, noticing the fluid grace in her gestures, the way she leaned slightly forward when she spoke, and the easy confidence in her posture. There was something magnetic about her presence, not loud or demanding, but quietly compelling, drawing me in without effort. Our conversation started lightly, casual remarks about the day, the city, and small shared experiences, but soon it began to deepen in unexpected ways. She asked questions that weren't just polite curiosities, questions that made me pause and think. And when I answered, she listened with an intensity that felt almost intimate, her eyes never leaving mine, her fingers idly tracing the rim of her teacup, as if keeping time with the subtle rhythm of our connection. I noticed small details I hadn't before. The warmth in her laughter, the soft tilt of her head when she smiled, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, hinting at a life full of experiences both joyful and bittersweet. I found myself leaning in, unconsciously mirroring her movements, drawn by a desire to be closer without knowing why. At one point, she reached over to adjust a strand of my hair that had fallen into my eyes. Her fingers brushed my forehead lightly, and the touch lingered for a heartbeat longer than necessary. I felt an unexpected shiver, a small but unmistakable spark of connection. She caught my reaction with a faint, knowing smile, and I realized she was aware of the effect she had on me. The room seemed smaller, warmer, more intimate as the night wore on. Shadows from the flickering fire danced across her face, highlighting the subtle curve of her cheek and the gentle strength in her gaze. There was a softness to her presence that contrasted with the quiet power she carried, a balance that both intrigued and comforted me. Our conversation drifted toward personal stories, childhood memories, quiet regrets, fleeting triumphs. She laughed at my mistakes and shared her own with a candor that made me feel honored to witness. The more she revealed, the more I wanted to understand her, to explore the layers beneath her composed exterior. And still, the touches remained small, almost accidental. A hand brushing mine as we reached for the same teacup, her knee gently nudging mine when she laughed. Each movement was electric in its subtlety, a silent acknowledgement of the growing tension between us. There was no rush, no overt declaration, just a patient unfolding of connection that felt as natural as breathing. By the time the tea had cooled and the night deepened, I realized that staying here wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about being near her, feeling her warmth, and discovering a connection that was quietly intensifying with every shared glance and soft touch. The invitation to remain the night had become more than a question of time. It had become a question of the heart, and I felt, with a strange certainty, that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The room felt smaller now, cozier, as the night deepened. The amber glow from the fire flickered softly across her face, highlighting the faint lines that spoke of a life rich with experiences, joys, losses, and lessons learned. There was a quiet strength in her, yet tonight, beneath that composed exterior, I sensed something tender, almost fragile. I had been drawn to her confidence, but this glimpse of vulnerability made her presence even more magnetic. We had been talking casually, laughter and stories flowing naturally, when she paused. For a moment, her eyes seemed distant, fixed somewhere beyond the walls of the room, and I sensed she was on the verge of revealing something deeply personal. My pulse quickened, part curiosity, part apprehension, and part the unspoken thrill of closeness. "I haven't always been this," she said softly, gesturing vaguely to herself, to the poised woman I thought I knew. Her voice carried a weight, not of regret exactly, but of experiences she had carried alone. She shared a memory of heartbreak, a chapter of her past that had left scars invisible to the casual observer. There was no dramatization, no plea for sympathy, only honesty and the courage to trust me with it. I listened, leaning slightly forward, drawn to her words and the tremor in her hands as she sipped her tea. Her vulnerability was like a magnet, pulling me in closer. I wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but there was a careful dance here, a delicate balance between respecting her space and acknowledging the unspoken connection between us. When our hands brushed again, this time more deliberate, a shared moment of warmth as she passed me the tea, I felt the electricity in the subtle contact. Her touch lingered on my fingers for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. And in that pause, the room seemed to hold its breath. I realized how much I wanted to understand her, to be someone she could trust completely. Her gaze met mine, steady and searching, and for a moment, I felt her vulnerability mirrored in my own chest. The walls I had unconsciously built around my emotions seemed to soften, giving way to a growing tenderness I hadn't anticipated. The conversation continued, flowing now into quieter, more intimate reflections, small regrets, fleeting hopes, the weight of life's complexities. Every gesture became more meaningful. The brush of her knee against mine as she shifted in her seat, the way her hand occasionally hovered near mine without fully resting, the soft exhale as she spoke of her past. There was a rhythm to it, a silent dialogue conducted through glances, touches, and the spaces between words. By the time the fire had burned low, the intimacy in the room had deepened in a way that neither of us needed to label. The quiet vulnerability she had shared made the connection feel sacred, fragile, and intensely real. I realized that the night was no longer about mere curiosity or intrigue. It had become about understanding her, being present with her, and sensing a closeness that had grown without a single dramatic gesture, only through honesty, trust, and the gentle, electric pull of unspoken desire. The room felt suspended in a soft, golden haze as she settled back into the sofa, her posture relaxed yet deliberate, as if every movement were meant to draw me in closer. The fire had dwindled to gentle embers, casting fleeting shadows that danced along the walls and across her face. There was a quiet intensity in her eyes tonight, a teasing promise lingering just beneath the surface. "I suppose you're wondering about the truth I mentioned," she said lightly, her voice smooth, carrying that subtle edge of mischief I had come to recognize. There was no rush, no pressure, just the gentle pull of curiosity that seemed to wrap around me like a soft ribbon. My heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from a magnetic tension in the room. I nodded, trying to keep my composure, though the way she looked at me, half serious, half playful, made me feel exposed in the most exhilarating way. She leaned slightly forward, her fingers brushing the rim of her teacup, her gaze holding mine like an unspoken challenge. "Patience," she murmured, almost as if reading my thoughts. "The truth isn't something I just hand over. It's something you have to discover, if you stay." Her words lingered in the air, delicate and intoxicating. There was a rhythm to her teasing, a careful orchestration of tension and restraint. I realized that every gesture, every inflection was part of the dance she was leading. The subtle tilt of her head, the flicker of a smile, the faint exhale as she leaned back. Each movement drew me in, urging me closer without a single overt motion. The sofa felt suddenly smaller as we shifted slightly toward each other. Our knees brushed lightly, and I felt the warmth of her presence more intensely than ever before. The faint scent of her perfume mingled with the fire's lingering warmth, intoxicating and grounding at the same time. Every glance, every pause in conversation, seemed charged with unspoken meaning. "You're curious, aren't you?" she asked softly, her voice almost a whisper now. There was no judgment in it, only an acknowledgement of the connection building between us. I swallowed, realizing that yes, I was more than curious. I was captivated, drawn not just to the mystery she held, but to the person behind it. She laughed lightly, a sound that fluttered through the quiet room like a delicate wind chime. Her hand hovered near mine, brushing against my wrist as if testing the boundaries of proximity. My pulse quickened at the contact, and I felt the tension between us deepen, a slow, simmering current that neither of us dared to fully name yet. By the time the clock whispered toward midnight, it was clear that the night was no longer simply about words or stories. It was about closeness, the magnetic pull of unspoken understanding, and a shared desire to explore the truths we had only just begun to reveal. Her teasing confession of curiosity had become an invitation, not just to uncover secrets, but to surrender in small, electrifying increments to the connection that was steadily unfolding between us. The fire had dimmed to soft embers, and the room seemed to shrink around us, leaving only the warmth of her presence and the quiet rhythm of our shared breaths. The teasing tension of earlier had evolved into something subtler, more profound, a silent dialogue conducted through glances, gestures, and the smallest of touches. Each movement seemed deliberate yet effortless, a delicate balance between restraint and intimacy. She laughed softly at something I said, and without thinking, I reached to brush a stray lock of hair from her face. Her cheek felt warm beneath my fingers, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly closer, her hand hovering just near mine before settling briefly atop it, a touch so fleeting that I almost questioned whether it had happened at all. But the electricity in that moment was undeniable, a current that pulsed through the quiet room and wrapped around my chest like a whisper. We drifted into conversation again, this time about dreams and regrets, the small, unspoken pieces of ourselves we rarely share. Her voice was soft, almost confiding, and I felt the weight of her honesty settle into me. She spoke of choices she had made, of moments she had cherished and lost, and I listened, leaning closer, absorbing every word as if it were a secret meant only for me. Her fingers brushed mine again as she reached for her cup, and this time, the contact lingered just a heartbeat longer. My pulse quickened, awareness sharpening to every detail. The faint scent of her perfume, the warmth of her arm against mine, the subtle rise and fall of her chest with each breath. Even in stillness, there was intimacy, a closeness that transcended words. She paused, looking at me with a quiet intensity that made my heart catch. "You're different," she said softly, almost a statement, almost a question. "You notice things most people overlook." Her eyes searched mine, a gentle vulnerability behind the confidence she carried. I wanted to reach closer, to close the small gap between us, but I hesitated, savoring the tension that had been building since the moment I first entered her home. The night seemed to stretch around us, each second heavy with unspoken desire. Every brush of skin, every subtle shift of posture carried weight. Her knee touched mine lightly as she shifted on the sofa, and the warmth of her presence seeped into me, comforting and stirring all at once. Our conversation slowed, words becoming secondary to the silent communion we shared, the exchange of trust, curiosity, and growing attachment. By the time the room had grown quiet, save for the soft hum of the embers, it was clear that something profound had shifted. The playful tension of the earlier evening had deepened into an emotional intimacy neither of us had expected. There was no need for declarations or confessions yet. The simple act of being near her, of feeling the warmth of her touch and the honesty in her eyes, was enough. In the stillness, I realized that the night had become a journey, one that was as much about connection and understanding as it was about the truths she had promised to reveal. By the time the clock whispered past midnight, the room had fallen into a comforting silence. Only the faint crackle of the fire and the gentle hum of the city beyond the windows filled the space. We sat close, yet not touching, at least not yet, each of us acutely aware of the tension that had been quietly building all evening. There was a weight in the air now, a sense that the moment she had hinted at was finally upon us. She turned her gaze toward me, soft and unguarded, and I noticed for the first time the subtle shadows under her eyes, the lines around her mouth that told stories of laughter, of sorrow, of experience. Tonight, she was inviting me into a part of herself that few had ever seen. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet but firm, carrying the kind of sincerity that makes the listener pause. "I've been cautious about who I let in," she said, her eyes searching mine as if measuring not just my intentions but my heart. "I've built walls carefully to protect myself." But she paused, a faint sigh escaping her lips, and the vulnerability in that pause struck me like a physical force. "Something about you, it feels different." Her words hung in the air, and I felt the gravity of the moment. This was not merely about curiosity or intrigue. This was about trust, about surrendering a piece of oneself to another. She shifted slightly, just enough for her knee to brush mine, and the warmth of that contact sent a thrill through me, a delicate, electric acknowledgement of the closeness between us. "I'm not perfect," she continued, her voice softening. "In my life, it's complicated. But I want you to understand me, truly. If you're willing to stay, to see me as I really am, then tonight will be more than a visit. It will be a revelation." I reached out slowly, my hand hovering near hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let her fingers brush against mine, a tentative but deliberate connection. Her touch was warm, grounding, and filled with unspoken meaning. In that simple gesture, I felt the culmination of the evening, the trust she had extended, the vulnerability she had shared, and the growing bond between us. Her gaze met mine again, steady and intimate. "There's more to me than what you see," she said softly, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. and I think. I want you to know it." I nodded, words unnecessary. The night had shifted, transformed from playful curiosity to emotional depth, from tension to a tender intimacy that neither of us could deny. We sat together, close enough now that our shoulders brushed lightly, our fingers intertwined just enough to feel the warmth of each other. Every heartbeat, every shared breath, carried a quiet understanding. The truth had been revealed, not with fanfare, but through honesty, presence, and the silent acknowledgement of connection. For the first time, I saw her fully, and in seeing her, I realized that the story she had promised to show me was not just about her life, her past, or her secrets. It was about the trust she was placing in me, the invitation to be part of her world, and the gentle, undeniable pull of desire tempered by respect and care. The revelation was complete, and it was beautiful. The fire had burned down to soft embers, casting a gentle, amber glow across the room. Outside, the city slept quietly, but inside, there was a warmth that went far beyond the fading heat of the hearth. It was in the space between us, in the subtle closeness that had built over the evening, the quiet culmination of shared glances, soft touches, and heartfelt conversation. We sat side by side on the sofa, knees lightly brushing, shoulders almost touching. There was no need for grand gestures or words. The room seemed to hold the unspoken acknowledgement of the connection we had forged. I could feel the steady rise and fall of her breath, the warmth of her hand resting just inches from mine. Slowly, tentatively, our fingers intertwined, a natural fit that felt like it had been waiting all along. Her gaze met mine, soft but confident, as if silently affirming everything we had discovered about each other. The earlier tension had melted into a quiet intimacy, a mutual understanding that went deeper than curiosity or desire. "Thank you for staying," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. There was no need for explanation. Her gratitude, and the way her hand lingered in mine, said it all. I shifted slightly, leaning closer, and she didn't pull away. Her head tilted toward mine, just enough for our cheeks to almost touch, and I felt the gentle warmth radiating from her, a contrast to the cool night outside. Her hair brushed my forehead, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. The room, the night, the world outside, all of it faded until there was only this quiet, electric closeness between us. We spoke little, our conversation replaced by shared presence. Every small gesture carried meaning. The subtle squeeze of her hand, the way our knees brushed as we shifted slightly on the sofa, the faint brush of her shoulder against mine as she adjusted her position. Each movement was a silent acknowledgement of trust, care, and the deepening bond between us. Eventually, she rested her head lightly against my shoulder, her hair brushing softly against my neck. I felt the steady beat of her heart beneath her chest, a comforting rhythm that mirrored my own. In that simple act, the evening's journey, from curiosity and intrigue to trust and emotional intimacy, found its tender conclusion. The night had revealed not just her truth, but the quiet, undeniable connection that had grown between us, delicate yet unshakable. As the first light of dawn began to touch the sky outside, we remained close, neither of us moving to break the quiet spell. There was a sense of completion, of fulfillment, that lingered in the room. The story of the night was no longer about secrets or revelation. It was about presence, understanding, and the gentle warmth of two hearts discovering each other. Finally, with a soft sigh and a faint, contented smile, she lifted her head to meet my eyes. The unspoken promise was clear. The connection we had nurtured tonight was only the beginning, built on trust, tenderness, and the subtle, enduring power of closeness. And in that quiet, golden-lit room, I knew I had found something rare, a slow-burn intimacy that would linger long after the night had ended.